Humans of the cardboard, welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today we need to talk Banlist. Nationals is over. We are creeping up about a month-ish away from Banlist season, from projected Banlist season. We usually get them every 3-ish months. And with that, I want to talk about some cards because we're in a very particular spot with where the Banlist is looking to be dropped. This will be post Power of the Elements, which is really awkward because we want to ban all these cards that were degenerate during Nationals, but we might be in an entirely new format that doesn't even fully show the degeneracy of these cards that we just saw. And so it's a weird place. But today I want to talk about everything that I think was worth ban list mentionable kind of list, post Nationals, as well as some preemptive hits and stuff that could happen prior to, or not even prior, I guess technically it would be post Power of the Elements, but it'd still be really early on, potential hits. So let's jump into this thing. We're skimming through here, starting off with the Adventure Engine. We know how degenerate this engine is. Obviously, it's just so splashable, such a good backbone to any deck that kind of lacks a little extra oomph. This deck can cover up a lot of holes, or this engine can cover up a lot of holes. Really good. So the question is, where does Konami go with this? If they want to hit this engine, do they go after Water Enchantress and Write as like a consistency hit to the engine? Make it so that you got to play 2 to 3 bricks just to play maybe 4 starters, maybe 2 starters if they want to go all the way to the OCG's level and limit both the starters. I don't know, but that's definitely an interesting topic to already start on. The other route they could go, in my opinion, that I think would be interesting and different from the OCG, but still fun, Griffin Rider. If you ban Griffin Rider, you take away the generic kind of floor of this engine, and it just makes the engine a little more punishable. It makes this less of a crazy protection, start your play with this, get the Griffin Rider up first, and now boom, your hand traps are useless. Sweet. It gives you just less of a protection going first. You still have the payoff in terms of interruption with a Legal Knight. You just don't have the just basic Omni Negation, cover 1 effect, whatever it is, protection. And I think that'll scare a lot of players off, but I think the deck can still, obviously, it's a great engine going second, playing into boards and outing floodgates and stuff, so there's still some really redeeming qualities about the engine. I just don't think it kills the engine outright. And I think that would be an interesting way to go around it. Sometimes we see the TCG trying to be different from the OCG, and I think that would be a cool way to do it. Next up, we move to, I guess you could argue, the Punk engine. I don't know if you can really hit any of the Punk cards. What do you hit if you hit an actual Punk card? If anything, I think they just need to take a look at Emergency Teleport again. Non-once per turn, any Psychic monster in the game, which does give them some limitations with how they want to design any future Psychic archetypes, so that can get a little dicey. So I don't know. It's just a little odd. I don't know. We're in a weird place with this one because we also have 2 new Punk cards in Power of the Elements. I don't know if they want to go ham on on Punk when they're about to get their next wave of support that's supposed to really help them. I hear from pure Punk players. So maybe we have another format with E-Tele hanging around. I think this is also a potential broken extender in Splites as well, being able to summon Gammas and other level 2 Psychics, or maybe even Ghost Ogre, and make use of those. I don't know. Another thing to keep in mind for those Synchro decks, Chaos Ruler, the Magical, Chaotic, Dragon, whatever. This card's seeing a lot of play. Whether it's Dragon Link or whether it's these Punk Synchro decks, this card is crazy right now. He is a free plus, well, technically he's a +2 because he also comes back from grave later while also getting you a card from the top of your deck, and then depending on what else you excavated, you might have gotten other pluses elsewhere. This card is insane. I do think there's a world where this card could be hit. I just don't know. They can go multiple different routes. If they go after E-Tele and hit consistency to those Synchro Punk decks, then they only have to worry about this card more so in the Dragon Link decks. And there's other ways they can go about hitting them as well. Just depends. Still a semi-new card. Would they go after it? I don't know. But I think it is something worth noting because it is insanely powerful. I also have to mention Hulk here. OCG has banned Hulk, so will the TCG follow suit? I don't know. It's kind of hard to say. Like I said, the TCG loves to do different, just keep it different somewhat on our ban list to make our formats feel different at times, and Hulk would be a really big difference going forward for sure. It just seems like every single format, there's like a new degenerate way to abuse Hulk, and there are some really cool interactions with Hulk, which I like personally, but we obviously love finding the most degenerate ways to abuse it, which is stuff like Red Rose, which potentially could be banned. I think the one thing on here with Red Rose is we put it to 1. Like, okay, cool, we're not hard drawing it as often, but as long as Hulk's still in the game, you just Hulk it out, and as long as you have any other body that can help it synchro off, you're going to get an insane amount of advantage immediately. And so as long as we can just pull this out of the deck, even having it at 1 is still worth it in a lot of these decks. Even if you have to play like the Rocks Rose and the Basil Rose Shoot, bricks in your deck, it's still worth it. Still really strong. I wonder if they do something about either one of these. Maybe you hit Red Rose, maybe you hit Hulk, but it feels like one of them probably should go because like they tried to hit it, just didn't really work. We're still seeing it all over the place. Fairy Tale Snow, another one. Because it's dumpable off of Shooting Riser, because it's dumpable off of, Branded Fusion, it's pretty accessible in a couple of these different decks. Obviously a really strong card. A lot of people are saying this should have never been unbanned. I just think the problem is when you go full combo, and then also while going full combo, you set this up engraved, it makes some of these boards like near impossible to break. Because it stays engraved the whole time, you could have stuff that like messes with your opponent's board, your Dark Rulers, your Droplets, that stuff, and then you still have to worry about Fairy Tale Snow. So you had to use resources just to even get through the stuff on board, but because this is such a different way to interact, you still have to deal with it, and it's a lot. And the fact that like there were people are like reviving this to book something, and then it's a level 4 body, so they can like Shooting Riser away with it to get another interruption, or Hulk into something like one of the synchro tuners and like go from there. Like, it's crazy, and this card is certainly something to mention. I don't think it has to be banned, but I think it's definitely worth mentioning. Okay, so that's it for most of like the archetypal stuff. We'll get to Anti-Spell in a sec. I do want to mention that I think like Sword Soul, Fluanderies, Despia, when I look at those decks, I don't know what to hit. They're those kind of decks, kind of like Salad, where you're like, I guess we just hit like their consistency stuff. So like Gazelle and Circle, like I guess we could look at like Despia and be like, oh, do we hit like a Luber so they have less normal summons? Oh, do we hit Branded Fusion to 1 so that they're not hard drawing it as often? And like if they go through 1, it's just kind of gone. Like, what do we do? I honestly don't know. I think it's potentially possible we see some consistency hit like the Sword Soul Searcher, hit maybe Branded Fusion for Despia, and maybe hit like, I don't know, the Field Spell for Fluanderies. I don't even know what you hit with Fluanderies, but, something. It's possible. I just don't think any of their cards specifically stand out to me of being so degenerate they have to be addressed. So I figured I'd mention that. Moving into these, Anti-Spell should probably be banned. I think my basis for this is when you look at Nationals, like it has to be like 60 plus out of the 64 top players who topped the event were probably playing triple Anti-Spell on their side. That is a bad sign. Especially when we banned Imperial Order for essentially just turning off every spell in your opponent's hand, and then this card sitting there and doing the exact same thing functionally. I know there are other cards that can work around this, and that there are some particular interactions that makes both cards a little different. But as far as like what people are playing them for, it's essentially the same function, just turning off 2 to 5 cards in your opponent's hand just because of this one card. And then as long as you have any other interruptions on your board, a lot of times that can get the job done. So I think because of that, I think this card should probably go. Yeah. And then Mystic Mine, same thing. Like we saw a Sword Soul list maining triple Mystic Mine this out of Nationals. We saw a going second Despia list triple Mystic Mine. Sky Strikers, which by the way, the last YCS prior to Nationals got first place, and that dude was playing like 10 plus copies of cards that get him to Mystic Mine. And now Ryan Yu, great player, probably the best striker player we've ever seen. Mystic Mine, like he relied on Mystic Mine to get the job done. He opts second and he Mystic Mines you. I think it has fundamental flaws with the fact that combo decks are so scary that we have to play hand traps or we'll just get blown out of games by wombo combo decks. And while you're allocating for that, you can't also allocate for Mystic Mine enough to really like consistently see outs to that as well. There's give and take there, and it's uneven. And I think because of that unevenness, you kind of have to lean combo hate because that's what you're going to expect to see more. And that just means you lose every time somebody shows up to a YCS and Mystic Mines you game 1. That's just how it works. And I think because of that niche, because it just keeps fitting into that YCS after YCS, I think it's got to be like hit to 1 at some point. I'd be okay with put it to 1. Still searchable off terraforming, still searchable off set rotation if you want, but like you can't just hard plop 3 copies of it and see it all the damn time. That's kind of what I think there. Call by the Grave probably should be banned. It's just one of those cards. It works so specifically that like, are you going to play around a one of, that your opponent might have when, it works so differently, and the numbers game would otherwise tell you to play around other stuff they're probably playing. It makes it hard, and you can get punished by it all the time. That's why players are frustrated with it. And then we get to the preemptive hits. These are not going to happen. No, Konami is not going to hit Toad prior to Sprites. Without Toad, Sprites are much more mediocre. Still a good deck, still a good engine, but this is their boss monster. It just is. And this is maybe a hit down the line with Sprites, but it's definitely not happening immediately. At least 3 weeks into this the archetype being a thing. Same thing with Winda. I get it, degenerate floodgate that is going to be taken advantage of into your elements, but again, like people want to play this deck at full power for longer than 3 weeks, so you gotta let them hang for a little bit. I don't expect either of these cards to see a ban, but I do potentially think this card could see a ban, and maybe even some of the other viruses are worth looking at, but they've been seeing more and more uptick in the OCG, essentially as like an anti-spell equivalent. When you're going first, your opponent's on a pretty spell-heavy deck, and you just go EEV, like Tribute, call spells, and then you rip like 4 cards out of your opponent's hand. It's essentially functioning like anti-spell, but even harder because they just straight up lose the cards altogether, which is just awful. And any spell they draw for the next 3 turns, they still lose it. Even in trap matches is brutal too, but you don't see those as often. Absolutely brutal card. The only reason I could see Konami going after this is whereas like Toad and Winda are like parts of your end board, this is just a random like generic like essentially like akin to an FTK type card, depending on the deck you're playing against. There shouldn't be cards that brutal, I think, that can be kind of abused generically. As we get more cards added to the pool of Yu-Gi-Oh!, we're going to see easy dark monsters to take advantage of with these, and so I think because of that, it's probably safer to look at these and maybe think about hitting them. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it, yeah. Those are all the cards I wanted to talk about today. I think I'm kind of torn on all of them, especially since we don't know exactly how the format's going to look post Power of the Elements when we are actually going to get this ban list. It is possible that almost everything we talked about today is just a little bit less popular by the time we're in the middle of Power of the Elements format, and so Konami looks at it and says, do we really need to hit any of this stuff? And might just get like a bare bones, barely hitting anything kind of ban list, where I would at least hope that maybe Anti-Spell or Mystic Mine could end up on there. But outside of that, I honestly don't know. But I think all this stuff is definitely worth mentioning, worth looking at as far as considering for the ban list next month. And yeah, so those are my thoughts. That's what I'm thinking as of right now, post Nationals 2022 and potential ban list stuff, post Power of the Elements and such. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please let me know in the comment section down below what you think on any of these cards. If you think anything specific about any of the things I mentioned, or if you think there's a card or two that I didn't mention here that should also be looked at going down into ban list season. I want to hear your thoughts just generically. Let me know what you're thinking there. But I am out of here. Thank you so much for watching. As always, guys, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more stuff from me down the line. Also follow me on Twitter. New Twitter. I'm having fun with that. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.